Well, good morning and welcome. This is Tampa Home Talk, and we're going to continue the conversation a little bit from last week where we were talking about, well, actually, this has been a couple weeks now, like 2 or 3 maybe.
It better be a couple of weeks. I wasn't here last week.
Yeah, we're on our trend. This market's crazy. Leo and I were talking before the show, and it's, about 4 weeks ago, we had Bella Vita Designs in the house, and the title of that show is "So You Want to Build a Home, Now What?" And Leo and I were talking at the beginning of the show, and I think the challenge is, there's not a lot of land, right? We're running out of land.
So You're looking at Hernando County now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's some. So you're looking at a tear down or something that's,
tear down.
Going to be developed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the challenge is things are so expensive that the pricing is even weird. We were talking about this really quick during the show in terms of like the price of wood coming up so much that is it comparable to look at building with metal?
Yeah, I mean, it's scary to think that the price of a bar steel joist is going to be cheaper than the price of a wooden truss. I know that companies like 84 Lumber and Tibbetts are way backlogged. So I know from a timing standpoint, it might be easier to get a hold of steel, and then you can factor in the time value of money versus getting your home built now versus in the future. Because I know, and this is Leo Kane with Beryl Engineering.
Yeah, I know. Good morning. We haven't really introduced ourselves or dive into numbers. We'll do that next.
So I do know from a timing standpoint on some of our projects where we have previously said do trusses by others, we are now designing rafter systems to go into these. So I can see from a timing standpoint. I just have a hard time believing that metal bar steel joists are going to be cheaper than trusses.
I know. That's what I was thinking. But literally, we've had this whole conversation recently with a contractor. So as soon as we get some more definitive information on this, we're going to circle it back around.
The other thing you have to think about, if you're using steel joists, they're typically flat. So you're going to have a flat roof system versus trusses where you get this hip roof or a gable roof. And again, gable roofs are a thing of the past.
Tell me about this. Would it have to be flat? Why would that completely change the design?
So going back to college on our statics course.
Well, yeah, I want to talk about this. I know there's some engineering logistics behind this.
So if you look at a bridge, like those fancier older bridges, they're actually composed of a bunch of triangles. And the way that load works is when you push down on the top of the triangle, the force goes in the 2 directions down the legs. So just picture a triangle and picture pushing down on the top.
Pointing upward.
And that triangle starts to flatten out, and that flattening out is the load or the push going down the 2 sides.
Okay.
With steel, it's a very strong material. It doesn't have that kind of flex, so you can just go flat and across. So you don't need this elaborate triangle system.
Would you want to build? What if it wasn't in your plans? So it's a matter of not needing, right?
Well, you don't need the whole truss system. And I mean, I look at some of these elaborate systems, like you go into these condominiums or townhomes from the mid-'80s, and they've got these huge attics and all that wasted space. You got to think of how inefficient that is. You got all this area now that's not insulated, that's heating up, that you have to cool. You've got these sharper roof designs, which are more prone to wind damage. So yeah, if you can get a slight pitched flat roof, in Florida Building Code says the pitch needs to be 1/4 inch every foot. That's probably not enough. You probably need 1/2 inch every foot. And if you get 1/2 inch every foot, and you can do that through what's above the trusses, which is your insulation, you can get that, it's called tapered, where it basically starts fatter and then gets skinnier as you go. Mm-hmm. If you can go from a 2-inch taper insulation board down to 1/4 inch over the course of your roof system, you got a nice slope. You just don't have that Florida look, which is that pyramid style roof.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that makes sense. And I love that you brought that, that's a really simple explanation, right? That I never thought about why a truss is shaped like a triangle.
Yeah, no, that's why. And then
it makes sense.
And then the more load it has, the more pieces of the triangle. So if you think about it, you have this one triangle, which basically, let's just say, looks like your standard triangle. And then you have another piece coming off at an angle on the inside. That's to further move the load. Mm. So the way that wood works is your load path needs to be distributed. And the neat thing about the triangle shape is not only is it going to take a load that's coming from the top down, it's also going to take a load that's coming from the side in.
Okay.
Because it's not going straight up and down.
So what type of load would that be? What are you referring to?
There's
exterior walls or?
Yeah, just like wind force.
Okay.
Wind force isn't going to go. So a tree limb falls on your house. That's a load that goes straight down. Mm-hmm. Now, a wind, like say a 90-mile-an-hour gust, that's hitting the side of your house. Mm-hmm. That's not going straight down. So the truss there, because those members are angled, they're absorbing that load and sending it down. Where if it's straight up and down, it's having to actually take the full brunt of that side wind. So they're actually stronger for being triangles.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes absolute sense.
But yeah, it just baffles me that steel at this point in time could be cheaper. Now, it could be a combination of cheaper because it's faster. I know steel isn't going down in price.
Right. Everything. I mean, the inflation is really the bigger conversation here, right? Of the cost of everything going up.
Well, I've said this for the better part of 2 years now. We are seeing some kind of hyperinflation for one reason only. Back when the market collapsed in 2008 and the manufacturers got back on their toes in 2013, they didn't raise prices for the decade.
Right.
They just were scared to. Because
Right.
everything is still fresh from, the market collapsed and we had all this stuff. It was all like everyone had post-traumatic stress syndrome and they were battered children basically being the industry. So COVID comes around and it's an excuse to raise their prices. So we saw a 10-year inflation gap just get gobbled up, all these price increases. Because I remember sitting in my CEO groups and they're all like, the manufacturers are like, how do we raise our prices without losing customers? I'm like, well, thankfully, everyone's raising prices, so just do it. Because they're like, we haven't, and they all said the same thing. We haven't had a price increase in 6 years. We haven't had a price increase in 7 years. And then all of a sudden they used COVID as the excuse to do this price increase.
Well, and it's happening across the board and there's been more than one, right? And I don't, is it hyperinflation? Is it too much? I guess that's the question, right? That it's hard to, without truly studying this and looking back, it's hard to tell.
Well, some of it's going to be a swift economics. It's supply and demand. So they raised prices, people just accepted it.
Right.
And then they raised prices and people accepted it. And then minimum wage went up. And when a business, and this is from economics, when a business has a price increase, they're going to pass some of that price increase on to the end user, and they're going to absorb some of it.
Right.
So if materials are going up in price and labor is going up in price, us as the end user are going to see this increase. So minimum wage is now $10 in Florida. It's creeping up to 15. And then people who are making 15 are now making 18 or 19 because it just cascades up. So of course your services and your goods are going to cost more. So you have to look at it from, okay, now the minimum wage worker is making $3 more an hour. But if everything is costing $4 more an hour, they lose out.
Right.
And that's what happens when you have this inflation. And that's
hyperinflation. That's exactly where we are.
Yeah.
You see it right now with the rent prices. I mean, the hedge funds are still gobbling up so many things. They're still very fast and furious in the market, and they are absolutely increasing the rent prices. And it's not like it's one place. It's happening everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, as it gets harder and harder for people to find a home to buy, and everyone's got to live somewhere, and people want to move here, rent prices go up. And it's just again, supply.
Demand.
It's all supply and demand. Our economy is based on the capitalistic function of people need to buy stuff, and people have to find stuff to buy.
Yep.
And as long as there's a huge demand, that supply will be down, pricing's going to go up.
Well, that's a perfect segue into our numbers this week. And not seeing anything major, but a few little changes in the numbers this week. When you look at the number of new listings, we have 579 this week compared to 537 last week. And the number of sold homes is up a smidge, but we were up pretty high. When you look at last week, we only had 537 new, 617 sold, and then 1,089 pending. So it would make sense that we have a little bit more higher on the sold from last week. So we're coming in at 766, where we were at 617 last week. And the number of pendings
is dropping, which it has
is
to.
974.
It has to drop because there's half the number of new listings. So eventually pending's a lagging indicator, and
Right.
it's going to have to drop.
Yep. So this is the stuff we're watching very closely, not showing up in the numbers yet. I talk about this all the time. We'll talk about what that means, that the changes in the market are not yet showing up in the numbers. But if you want more information on this, or you're looking to sell your home, or even just get your value to update your net worth, we're at 813-377-2775. Again, you can call or text us at our off-air number, which is 813-377-2775. We'll be right back after this break. Stick around.
Welcome home. Leo Kane here, Beryl Engineering and Inspection. You are listening to the Tampa Home Talk. We are
Hey, Tampa Home Talk.
Tampa Home Talking.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, so we just went through a vicious cycle of the numbers. We talked about inflation. We've depressed our listening audience.
What do you think, like, in your thoughts, Leo? And I know it's the $1 million question. That's what I tell people all the time, that if anyone knew the exact answer to this, they'd be the multimillionaire, because, you know, it's like knowing the 6 lottery numbers for the evening. But when do you think things are going to slow down?
As far as the real estate market?
Yeah.
They already have.
But I mean, like, really slow down.
They have.
We're still seeing multiple offers on stuff. Still seeing people go above list. We're still seeing appraisal gap waivers. You know, buyers willing to write a check for the whole thing.
Yeah, but I'm also starting to see the resurgence of the 203K and the home style, Fannie Mae home style loans. And these are interesting.
We're going to
loans.
actually talk about that today, too.
Yeah, but these are loans where you have to buy a property, you want to renovate it, and you have to, the purchase price plus the renovation price has to appraise. So if there is the ability to do this, we are starting to turn, because when you put a house on the market for $200,000 and you sell it for $250 because everyone's giving you these multiple offers, and it appraises for $220, there's no way you can do one of these two loan products, because you can't rehab it and have it appraise when you're already buying it for over appraisal value. So the mere fact that we're getting a lot of these in right now, home styles and 203Ks, the mere fact we're getting a lot of those in means the market is turning.
Are people being smarter with what they're renovating, like in terms of cost and what they're trying to do?
I don't necessarily see. I don't think they're being smarter. I've got one where we have a guy out today. He's going to the house. It was a remediated sinkhole property from 2003 where the sinkhole opened back up.
Ooh, say more about that.
So this is in Del Rico.
So how was it remediated?
We're not sure, because no one has any records, because it's 2003.
And the county doesn't have anything either?
The county doesn't have anything that far back. So we're pretty sure it was just pinned and not grouted, and then the whole basically back patio area has kind of sunken in and cracked. It looks vicious. I'll show you a picture during the next break.
For our listeners, let's talk about that, what that means real quick, because we kind of roll through that, but I don't think maybe that we have a lot of people that have moved here. So this is new territory to them. So talk about the difference between underpinning and grouting so that someone can understand what that's like on a void, and I'll jump in.
Well, here's the simple way to say it. Let's take a brick and let's take a napkin, and let's take the napkin and put it on the table. And then put the brick on the napkin on the table. That brick represents your house. The table represents what your ground should be like. Now take that same napkin and slide it off the table, so you're just holding the napkin with the brick on top. Brick falls right through, right? Because there's no table.
Right.
And the napkin can't hold it. That's kind of what happens when there's a sinkhole. House starts to fall through.
Yeah, simply put, it's a void or an open space under the house.
So underpinning, we're going to take that brick, and I'm going to attach toothpicks to that brick.
Well, they're a little thicker, but
I'm going to attach toothpicks to the brick so that are long enough to touch the ground. So I'm sliding the napkin off, but I'm going to take those toothpicks, and they're going to go down to the ground, and those toothpicks are what's going to hold your house up.
Some of them go sideways too, right? Don't they?
You still have that void. That napkin still can't hold that house. What's holding your house up is actually the toothpicks.
Yeah.
Now, over time, those toothpicks might shift. They might degrade. Again, they're straight
Maybe
up.
too much load.
They're straight up and down. So if the soil shifts to the right and left, now we're back to talking about the trusses from segment 1, where they get pushed to the side and they crack off. House
Plus,
falls.
it's still a brick, and the toothpicks are the only thing holding it.
Right. So what grout injection is let's take that same napkin and now let's make the table bigger. Because grout injection is basically I'm putting concrete.
Or pour concrete under.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I'm putting concrete underneath the brick still, so that brick is.
You filled the hole. Like if you can think about travertine having holes in it naturally, and they fill it.
Yeah, you fill the hole.
Thing.
So that's the difference between grout injection and underpinning. Now, up until the Lake Pageant.
Yeah.
In 2015 incident where a sinkhole swallowed up a home and then an entire subdivision.
Well, so let's talk about that. So it's interesting because
now we're going back to May of 2015.
I know, but and it was funny. I was actually in Vegas. I got a call from Pat George about this, saying it made national news, and I didn't believe
it. Made international news.
Oh yeah, definitely did. So what happened with that was, and here's the interesting part. I ended up catching up with some agents, that were from the area that sold a lot of real estate back in that day, and the developer in that area where that house was basically filled in land that shouldn't have been built.
They took a lake, and then they pushed the soil, made the lake smaller. And this is interesting. So when I'm talking about sinkholes, when I'm teaching my sinkhole class, I often use a kitchen sink sponge as a reference. Mm-hmm. You take a kitchen sink sponge and you get it wet, and it's big, it's soft, it's full, it's vibrant. And then as it dries out, it starts to shrivel up. And all those little holes and craters on the sponge become a lot more visible. And the sponge actually shrinks. That's what's happening underground in Florida. That's why the rainy season is so important.
Right.
So that's how I do the comparison. So, and when you use a sponge, if you're using it when it's wet, you can just kind of wash your dishes and everything. You use it when it starts to become dry. When you rub it, pieces flake off. Mm-hmm. So imagine that the sponge is what's called limestone, and that's what's underneath your house.
Yep.
So that's why it's important for the rainy season. So when you take a lake and you change the drainage, you dry out all that land. So you dry out that kitchen sink sponge to the point where you start getting all these sinkholes. And that's why they have problems in Louisiana. They're draining the bayou. That's why Florida has something called the Southeast Everglades Restoration Program, or SERP. These programs exist to keep our water tables where they need to be so the land doesn't dry out and everything falls through.
So that, going back to that sinkhole in that area, so basically, because of course I looked it up in MLS and I knew the agent that had it listed back then, so had to ask all kinds of questions, but basically started with a developer filling in the area that never should have been filled in. Like now they wouldn't be allowed to do that. Right, in this day and age. And basically what happened was over time, this void got bigger. Hence what you're talking about. And so when it changed hands the last time, the engineer recommended underpinning, like you just talked about, and grouting. And so what happened was the buyer bought it on the cheap. The homeowner took the money and didn't make the repairs. They sold it as is with the open, sinkhole. And the new buyer came in. They said, I don't think we need to grout it. We'll just underpin it. And that's going to be sufficient. How that happened or what engineer actually signed off on that, I don't know. Well, that's what they did.
I actually know the engineers who signed off on it. It's kind of interesting because the sinkhole world is not that big. I mean, there are 60 of us.
So talk about that. So what do they say?
There are 60 of us that the state of Florida has as what's called the neutral evaluator, and I'm one. We're allowed to come in and settle as an arbitrator type scenario a sinkhole claim. And there's only 60 of us in the state of Florida. So the sinkhole world is really small. So what ended up happening is back then, it was you could do grout or underpinning, and they would allow both of those as methods for repair. Even though a lot of people said, hey, a lot of the engineers said, hey, this isn't going to work. The insurance companies, the ones footing the bill for the repairs, are saying,
always want to do the cheaper
we'll
option.
Just do the underpinning.
Yeah.
So what was interesting is when this thing happened in May of 2015 and you watch the video, you can see the pins start to snap as the land goes.
I didn't see the pins, but I'm 100% sure you did.
You could see it. It's very fascinating. You see the house you see all the soil starting to collapse, and you see the house is just levitating because they're on these pins, and then you see the pins snap. And what you have to think about is when you're watching the whole video, the soil is moving, and it looks like water.
Yeah.
It looks like water, but that is actually dirt and sand and hundreds of metric tons or thousands of metric tons of force moving around like it's water. And of course it's going to snap the pins. So what happened was after that, the engineers won and the insurance companies lost, and they said, hey,
we told you so.
It's underpinning. It's not going to remediate your sinkhole. It's just going to stabilize your house.
So I think, well, the person that bought it, they did tell them to grout and underpin.
Yeah.
They chose just to, because again, they bought it on the cheap, just did the underpinning. So what happened was this void continued to grow.
Yeah, and then
for periods of time.
The house was foreclosed
and
on.
That's why you saw that.
So, and the two things that have changed my industry the most, which is building inspections in Florida, two things that have changed our industry the most, both have the same overarching story. There was Lake Pageant in 2015, and then there was Surfside in 2021.
Yep, in Miami area.
In Miami, or is it 2020?
I think it was 21.
Those are the two things that have changed our industry the most, but they both have the same exact story. There was a known issue for a decade that was ignored, and it led to a catastrophic collapse.
Well, you have to think about it. Listen to what we talked about. These are underground caverns, caves, voids under the house. And again, as people move here and that water consumption with very little restrictions continues to be consumed, those voids are going to continue to grow.
Well, Surfside was different. That was just lack of maintenance and poor design.
Right, but the Lake Pageant.
Oh, it was, yeah.
Yeah.
So but the both of those things, the key takeaway from both of those is it was over time, over a decade's worth of neglect and ignoring the warning signs. So 813-377-2775. That's 813-377-2775. When we come back, we will have Sarah Cricky.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, she's supposed to call in any minute now.
Well, we're going to talk about what is a construction perm loan and construction loans, what you need to know. We've been talking about building. We're going to tell you how that goes down next. Stick around. Welcome home. We are back in the house at Tampa Home Talk. We're so glad you're here. Thanks for listening. And we've talked a little bit off the cuff of the direction of the show this morning.
What? Us?
It's been very relative information, I think.
We never do that.
Very timely.
What do you mean? I said Sarah was going to join us, and Sarah Cricky from the mortgage firm.
We're still going to talk about construction loans, but welcome, Sarah. Let's talk about this crazy market as you got thrown into being a buyer yourself. Let's talk about this.
Wait, who'd she get for a home inspector?
Well, she never made it past go.
No.
So just a couple PSAs just to start off. For folks that bought a home as a primary residence, be conscious of the deadline for homestead. March 1st is the deadline. We're 7 or 8 days away from that. Make sure you get online with your respective county and file that homestead on time. But in terms of what's going on with the market right now, buyers that are trying to pre-qualify to purchase a home, it's been really tough shopping. We have a lot of people looking for a home right now. My suggestion is
Wait, let me ask you a better question real quick, Sarah. Out of all the people you have pre-approved, how many do you think that is? And how many are actually getting accepted per month?
We have dozens and dozens that are pre-approved.
I'd say more than dozens.
But definitely we're running into issues where we're getting offers accepted, and that was the point. For some clients, they're actually getting left behind in this current market.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a great idea if you pre-qualified with your lender a couple months ago to check in and understand what's going on in the current market and how you qualify. Because what's happening is our buyers are realizing it's a tough market, so they're going to their lender to pre-qualify for the absolute max that they can qualify for, so that they'll have a decent amount of inventory, if at all, to look at. And so these pre-qualifications are literally, close to being maxed out, and the market is changing. So, for example, if you pre-qualified a few months ago to purchase $350,000, and APRs can be very different from interest rates. You would want to call in for specific details for yourself. But just in terms of the way interest rates are trending up, if you pre-qualified at approximately a 3.5% interest rate on a $350,000 purchase, maybe putting 5% down a few months ago, and current market is closer to 4.25% right now, you're talking about a payment increase of over $140 a month. Now, couple that with purchase prices going up, and maybe now that same 350 home is closer to 370, now you're looking at an upward swing in payment of about $236 per month. And that can actually mean the difference of your pre-approval or not.
What price range are you looking at for those numbers, Sarah?
350 to 370, you know, and that's obviously almost a low price point in our current market, depending on the area you're shopping, you know. But just be conscious. If you pre-qualified knowing I need to be able to borrow as much as I possibly can a few months ago, you want to do a health check on that and make sure with market moving in terms of interest rate and purchase price points going up that you understand what your realistic budget is. You know, and unfortunately some buyers in a lower price point are just being left behind. They're being priced out of what they qualify for.
Yeah, I'm actually talking about, I'm going to be producing a video a little bit later today on, you know, ways, like 5 ways for a buyer to get their offer accepted in this market, because it's very tough. And as you saw firsthand yourself, Sarah, you know, and we talked about this, it's because Sarah actually made an offer on a house yesterday. It was only on the market for 1 day.
1 day? That's a long time.
It was near her. Well, wasn't even a day. It said 1 day on the market, but it was literally like hours. And I told Sarah, I said, look, you know you qualify. You've got the cash, so you don't need to make a contingent offer on financing, right? Like, even if you don't want to use your cash, make a cash offer and go get a loan. You can do that. A lot of people don't realize that.
We want to make sure the client's totally pre-qualified and well documented and all of that stuff. But you're right.
But a client can get ahead of this with you, right, Sarah? They can submit all of these things.
Absolutely.
And then
we can have all of that done in advance so that we're just waiting on an accepted offer.
So let's say you have all that, Sarah, and now I just got my cash offer accepted that I want to get a loan on. How long are we going to have to? I mean, obviously you got the disclosures, then you've got the appraisal, then you got to get it to underwriting. What's the time frame on that?
I mean, if we've got a complete file up front, we're going to go very quickly. As soon as we receive that executed contract, we're going to disclose the loan so we're compliant. In some cases, when we run the automated approval, we'll get an appraisal waiver, and we won't need to order an appraisal. In other cases, we will. We'll do that immediately.
Will you know that in advance of not having the address, or no?
No.
Okay.
Because what happens is the automated system with both Fannie and Freddie, for example, for a conventional loan, isn't just looking at the credit package. It's looking at the collateral. And it does have its own, it's a collateral underwriter, so it does have its own algorithm that looks at data, and if it agrees with the purchase price as the stated value, based on the parameters of the loan, which also include the down payment, the occupancy, the borrower's credit score, things like that play a role in it too, it can give a waiver of appraisal. Not that the borrower can't get an appraisal if that's what is going to make them comfortable, but the lender doesn't require. So that saves a lot of time. And that happens, a percentage of the time. So if we could get an appraisal waiver as a time saver, great. If not, we would order the appraisal immediately. The client, and we would also assist, start shopping for homeowners insurance quotes immediately, order title work immediately. And at that point, we're just really waiting on third-party things. So we would put basically all of that on Rush and get that file expedited and closed in a 2-week period.
Yeah, so I mean, if you had an inspection of at least 10 days, you could probably know enough to be comfortable in that deal, don't you think?
Yeah, in my offer, all cash, 2-week turnaround to close.
Yeah.
And waived appraisal, obviously.
Well, on cash, it's not a waiver, so let's be clear about that. On cash, there's no waiver. You don't get an appraisal contingency unless you add that in.
Understood.
Which we didn't do.
No appraisal contingency added in. No financing contingency. Super fast close. 10-day inspection period. And
full price.
Still beat out.
Wasn't enough.
In an hour.
Yeah.
Full price wasn't enough. In an hour, I was beat out.
Did you say you found out he got $25,000 above list?
$25,000.
All cash?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. The house you were looking at was very Airbnb-able, which is what we were talking about. And that particular scenario, the price is really, like, there's these little niche markets within the market. And if it can be Airbnb'd, we're seeing a significant,
Is that based on location or layout or
a little bit of all the above. So, for example,
no carpets anywhere?
well, Sarah's on the water. She has a boat. She can go directly out to the Gulf. This was on the other side of the street, so it wasn't on the water. But she's right down the street from Main Street in Newport Richey. That whole area is being revamped. So literally you can walk to the bars. You can put a boat in the boat ramp, all that stuff. And I said, if it were me, I would Airbnb it. I would set up fishing poles. I would set up kayaks. I would have a golf cart there. I would have everything that somebody would need to come just hang out and have a really great time.
That sounds awesome. I'd rent there.
See? Would it matter if it's 2 bedrooms, 1.5 bath? Be
That
fine.
makes it even better. I can put more people in it.
Yeah.
A 2-bedroom Airbnb can house 6 to 8 people.
See, Sarah? We were just talking about this walk, and it had a whole bonus room in the back, so definitely.
No,
8.
that definitely 8 to 12 people.
I think 12's pushing it. 8, absolutely.
You get your sleeping bags or you get your air mattress people in there. I mean, I've seen people cram a 2-bedroom.
Technically, the way you're marketing, I think 8 would be.
Oh yeah, no,
max.
6 would be 2 people per room is what you market.
Well, I mean, I've seen plenty of
things. About the idea of that, and I literally got beat out in an hour. It was a revolving door.
It's painful because you see, it's painful, right, when you experience it personally, Sarah. But now you know, like, what our buyers have endured to go through this.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, if you don't mind, can you hang out? We want to talk a little bit about construction perm, and I know,
Sure.
Some of the banks seem to be a little more competitive on this product, and that's the thing I love about Sarah. If she's not the most competitive, she'll let you know. She pretty much is on everything, not so much on construction perm loans, but, some things you probably need to know, and so Sarah can chime in on these things. So, number one, a lot of times the client's looking at getting a land loan, unless they're paying cash. They're looking at getting a land loan to basically buy the land. Sometimes people do it all at once, but it's rare. They may have a contract, have the builder all lined up, the cost of it, and then they're just looking for the land, so they can do it all as a package. And that's a better, easier way to finance versus getting a land loan. So if you want, can you talk about that, Sarah, like in terms of the loan to value, what's required to get a land loan, how much they'll have to put down, and the rates are typically a little higher, right?
Sure, and we don't write land loans, but I can speak about my experience where clients have gone to other banks. Typically, you're going to see banks write land loans
right,
as opposed to actual residential mortgage companies. But basically, what I'm seeing out there are land loans, are short-term loans.
Mm-hmm.
They want you to do something with the land. So one particular bank that I came across where a client was shopping for a land loan, they were requiring 30% down. The lot was only going to be financed for 5 years. So when you start dealing, and the interest rates are higher.
I think 30% down is pretty minimal, too, for land loan. That's about right.
Sure.
It'd be that amount or more.
Yeah, but if you're looking at a more expensive lot, I mean, and based on those terms, it for some folks is not desirable. I mean, we run into different situations. Some other clients will find land, and kind of the stars and the moon will line up. They'll find land. They'll write a contract with that seller of the land. They've already got their builder in mind. They've got an idea of the home they want to build.
What it's going to cost.
So they'll get with their builder on finalizing plans and specs. So they have numbers, because the lender is, if they don't own the land yet or didn't get a land loan, the lender is going to take the cost of the lot, and they're going to add to it the cost of the build, and they're going to package that as one loan.
Which is easier and better and faster.
Sure. Conventional construction perm loans require as little as 5% down.
Are you seeing any banks actually writing construction perm loans with 5%? I thought it was 10 minimum.
Yeah, we offer a 5% down.
Yeah, I didn't think any kind of those stable loans were that high.
Yeah, I thought they were all 10% or more. Well, I mean, these loans are typically a little bit more risky, right, in the lender's eyes. So the qualifications, it's a little more stringent. So we're going to talk about that and a little bit more when we come back right after this break. And we're also going to talk about some costs that your construction perm loan won't cover, and also 3 steps you should never skip if you're looking to build a home. If you stick around, we'll be back with Sarah Cricky here on Tampa Home Talk. I'm your host, Katrina Madewell, with my sidekick, Leo Kane with Beryl Engineering and Inspection. And if you'd like to get in touch with any of us or any of our guests, you can call or text our off-air number, which is 813-377-2775. 813-377-2775. We'll be right back.
Welcome home. This is Leo Kane talking with Sarah about construction perm loans.
One more thing I want to just mention, which I know it's hard, and Sarah will say if this is even an option, but owner-builder loans. I know it requires that the borrower they have to really demonstrate they've got the experience and the education and the licensing they need to really oversee the home construction process.
Yeah, I don't see that. I mean, 203Ks are pretty much set up to prevent something like that.
Yeah. So I think they're tough. There's probably a bank out there that will do it, but a lot of them won't want to.
You're really going to find this product varies in several different respects, from one lender to the next, from one bank to the next. They're all going to have a different version of this product. With the mortgage firm, we actually have a builder department. So when someone doesn't have to work with a large builder, they can work with a smaller scale builder, but we actually have a package that we send out first. It's one of the first things we do, so that the builder can provide their resume, their evidence of insurance and bond, and E&O and the whole 9 yards, and we put them through a process for builder approval. It doesn't take long, but we definitely, as a lender, approve the builder up front in order to proceed with a construction.
Well, this is an owner builder, so the owner is the builder themselves.
Yeah,
this
it's a little different.
So let me ask you this: I know if you're doing a renovation to your house, you can file a homeowner permit as long as the house is owned as an individual. Is that the same for a new build?
Yeah, you can do an owner-builder permit, but the challenge is banks don't want to finance owner-builder.
Of course. Why would they? That's super high risk.
Yeah.
Correct. That's not something that we do, but it is an interesting question. So I certainly would. I'll actually reach out so I can get you guys some more information on that, in terms of what competition's able to do or not do. I would say no to that. Across the board, but I'm sure, like Katrina said, there's someone out there with a portfolio product that will allow it. Probably, and they're probably going to have different terms.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It would have to be a bank portfolio product. It would just have to be. That's what I think.
Yeah.
So, here's a couple things that you should ask your bank with regards to construction perm loans, and then we'll talk about some costs that are not covered in that construction perm loan and 3 steps to never skip when you're doing this.
I think we're going to have to make this a 2-week segment.
No, it's going to be quick because we got more stuff to
Real
cover
quick?
next week. Yeah. Ask your bank if it's a one-time close and if the loan rolls to permanent financing, or if it's a double close, double qualifying. That's a big deal.
So basically what she's saying is you can get one close where someone gets a bucket of money at closing. A bucket of money is held in something called escrow, and then there are draws against that money, which is like turning on a faucet and some of the money trickles out during the course of construction. So when it gets to certain milestones, a company like ours would come in and verify the work's been done, and then money can go to the contractor and the owner.
Right. You want to also ask when you can lock the rate. That's a very big deal in this market. You can ask Sarah. Rates are moving quicker than they can even keep up, right? Have you had any good pricing increases since the year started, Sarah, or pretty much all uphill from here?
It's pretty much all uphill from here. And so you're going to want to understand from one lender to the next how long of a lock you can do. If your lock is going to allow you what they call a one-time float down. So let's say that you lock in to protect yourself and something does shift later in the year, rates improve. Do you have the option to float that lock down and grab that lower rate? A lot of lenders will offer a one-time float down.
And when can you lock it? Yeah.
And when can you lock it? So for some lenders, you're floating interest only, and you can't lock until construction begins, whereas with other lenders, you can lock for a longer term than that. And in some cases, they actually charge an origination point up front to do it, but you don't lose that money. It's applied towards your cash at closing as a credit when the loan is finished.
Yep.
And the nice thing about the one close,
one qualify
is if you get to a dual scenario, they're almost always going to not hold that second piece is going to be at the new rate.
Yeah, I would not recommend. I would definitely seek, if you're looking to build, seek a lender that will do one-time qualify, one-time close, permanent financing, and then ask how long that rate's going to be fixed, how much is going to be required down. And then here's another little big tidbit. Qualify for the most you think you'll absolutely need. Don't underqualify, because let's say you're looking to qualify for 500,000, right? And you know that your prices you're getting are 500 to 800, and you go, well, we're going to stay at 500. That's it. That's the number.
Yeah, no.
And then basically you go in at 500 and you run short. That's going to be an issue, right, Sarah? Like the buyer's going to have to come up with cash for that difference. So don't underqualify.
Really, yeah, and it's really easy for us to make quick changes and adjust a number down. But we definitely would like to have that safety net in place.
Yeah, it doesn't always go the other way very easy. A couple costs that your construction perm loan won't cover is the design phase. So if you're looking to completely draw out, design it, and essentially build it from scratch, you're not going to be able to, roll that into the cost of your loan. So you're going to have to do that on your own in advance. And then 3 steps you absolutely should never skip. And you guys feel free to add in anything you think I missed. But one of the things I would say is your feasibility study. So verifying that you can build what you want on the land and where you want it. You want to make sure if you got a certain size house on the land, you want to make sure it's all buildable. A lot of times it is not. And so the feasibility study is all of that, as well as, in my humble opinion, leading back to the conversation we had earlier, Leo, I would never build a home without boring samples. And so the boring samples is where the geotechnical engineer will bore down into the ground.
I would say it depends. I mean, if you're like in downtown Tampa, Seminole Heights, that area, I wouldn't get soil borings. If you're in Valrico, Safety Harbor, if you're in sinkhole land, then I would do it. Or if you're in undeveloped land. But I mean, if you're in the middle of a...
There's a Florida geological map, too, that you can look this up to see where they're at.
Sarah, I got a question for you, Sarah.
Sure.
Do you sometimes want to throw your hands up in the air with all the frustrations of mortgage business and go live on an island?
Absolutely. I'll answer that for her. I know her answer.
We really, for me, it's a tough market because we make friends with our clients. We really want what's in their best interest. We work with them for months and months at a time. We get to know them and about their families, and it just, it makes us feel bad when they're up against this tough of a market, when all we want to do is help them. It can be definitely frustrating.
Absolutely. Last final little step that you probably never want to skip, and I think your lender will require it, is surveys. And a lot of times there's multiple different types of surveys required when you're looking to build, but those are 3 steps I would never, ever skip. Sarah, thank you so much for adding to the value of the conversation today. We really appreciate it.
Sure.
And if you're looking to get a loan, any type of loan, she's going to be a fantastic resource for you. Highly recommend you call or text us, Sarah, and we'll get you connected. 813-377-2775. You can call or text us again at 813-377-2775. And we'll be back next week. Same time, same place with a new topic, new guest. Bye for now. Love where you live, or we'll fix it.
Where you live, or my mom.